Okay, now we're good. All right, so again, everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about STATA. To get started, what is STATA? So let's begin by clarifying what STATA is. STATA is a statistical data software tool that's commonly used in social science research. And it allows for a wide range of data analysis. And once you get the hang of it, honestly, it's pretty straightforward and not too scary or bad to use. So how can you access STATA? Right now, ASU has not made STATA available to students like it has with SPSS, as you might know. So to access STATA and use it on your personal computer, you would actually need to purchase a license through the STATA Corporation. So you would have to go to the STATA website and kind of purchase it there and download it from there. And if you want more information about that, we can send you the website or help you out with that. However, if you're a student in the School of Social and Behavioral Sciences, then you can come to the SAM Lab and we have STATA installed on our computers. And so you can come to our lab and use STATA through there as well. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. It's going to be mostly introductory, but some things we'll be talking about are, for example, learning how to import data and create and edit data within STATA. We'll also be talking about the different ways of navigating and executing commands and actions. We'll also be talking about learning how to run basic descriptive stats and correlations. And finally, talking about gaining some familiarity with the output display and interpretation. So to begin working in STATA, we first need to have some data in the software. So STATA does have its own format of data files, and they have the period DTA extension at the end, and that's kind of how you can differentiate it from other software programs or data sets or files. So if you create data directly in STATA and save it, that's the format it's going to be stored in. Alternatively, you can also import data even of a different format, such as Excel or SPSS. You can import it directly into STATA and then work on it in there. And then this is how we can view, edit, or create raw data directly in STATA. Actually, let me go back really quick. So sorry, to import data, you would go to the File tab here. You would go to Import, and then you can select the data set you want to work with. And then viewing, editing, or creating raw data. So you would select the Data tab up here. You go to Data Editor, and then depending on what you want to do, you would want to choose one of these tabs. So for instance, if you want to actually edit and work on your data, you would select Edit, or if you just kind of want to view it, you could do the Browse function. In this example, we want to edit it, so we click the Editor tab. So as you can see here, we have the raw data values visible on the left side, and here are all our different variables. And then information about the variables are here on the right. So if you select a variable, you can view or edit its properties over here in this like data editor section of the screen. So now that we have our data inside, we can begin to learn the ways to navigate through STATA and how to execute the tasks and commands we want to perform. So there are three ways we can navigate through STATA. One, we can use the menu system and the dialog boxes, which is kind of how I was showing you in the past two slides, clicking around on the different tabs. But we can also use a command window, and we can also use the do file editor. And Marianne is going to tell you more about that.
All right. So like Carla just mentioned, there's kind of three ways that we can navigate throughout STATA. The first way is using the menu system and dialog boxes. So this is the pretty straightforward thing that you might be used to with a lot of other software or other applications. This bar up here is the menu system. So you can use the menu system at the top of the window to find and select the command that you want to perform. And it'll just have a drop down like you see here. So if you hover over or click statistics, and then it gives you a drop down of all the possible options underneath statistics. And then once you click one of the options, it'll bring up the dialog box. So it'll just be a box, as in this case, for summary statistics. And you can input your variable, click OK, and STATA will perform the command. The second option that you can use to navigate throughout STATA is using the command window. So the command window is located at the bottom, so right here. And it's where you actually go in and type the command you want STATA to perform. On the left-hand side, in this area over here, a history list of the most recent commands will be displayed. And it's also called the review window. So if you've performed 3 or 4 different commands, they'll all show up here, and then you can click them and see what work you just did. And the actual output will be located in this center box right here. So you might be wondering what a command is. We've kind of mentioned it a couple of times. And what commands are is they're essentially how you're telling STATA what you want to do. So the general form of STATA commands is to write the command, the name of the specific command, put a space, then you put the variable you want to work with, followed by a comma, another space, and then you can specify any options. Not all commands will have options, but some of them do. And so really you just uses this general format of command, variable name, and then potentially an option. And once you input the variable name, you can, the variable name that you want to actually perform the command on, and then you specify your options, STATA will go through and actually perform that command. So for example, say we wanted to just list the number of observations we have specifically for this animal, this variable named animal in our data set. And just for a little backstory with this variable, the variable animal is a variable representing how many pets people have. So in order to perform this command of finding the number of observations in the animal variable, we could type in the following command in the window, the command window. So we would say list animal. So right here, list animal. And what it will produce is literally a count of the variable animal. And then as you can see here in this window, it gives us the list of our recent commands. Now, let's just say that we want to run some descriptive statistics. So for example, if we wanted to get the number of observations, the mean or the average, and standard deviation, specifically, again, for this animal variable, we would type in the following command of summarize animal. And then more specifically, if we wanted to know additional descriptive statistics, such as skew or kurtosis, we could add the detail option to this command. So without the option of detail, it's just summarize animal. And then we could add this detail option for more information. And what it will generate is this output that we see in the center. So the first output, the first green arrow over here, is just summarize command, or I'm sorry, it's the summarize command, specifically summarizing this animal variable here. And it gives us the number of observations for the variable, the mean, standard deviation, and the range. And then right below that is the second command we asked STATA to perform. and that's the summarize animal with the detail option. And as you can see, it gave us some additional information. So it gave us percentiles, skewness, kurtosis, variance, so several additional descriptive statistics. So here's a list of some common commands for just general descriptive information and descriptive statistics that you might want to be running in STATA. And then there's many more commands for STATA, but this is just a couple of basic ones that you might find helpful. So the describe command just gives you some basic information about your data file. So number of observations, number of variables, etc. Just gives you information generally about the data file. You can also use the code book to get more information about the different variables in the data file. The inspect is another type of command that gives you an overview of different variables in the data set. You can also plot the observations. The list variable, we saw it a few slides ago, but it just gives you a list of observations of all the variables in your data file, unless you specify one specific variable, which we did with that animal variable. And we've also got the tabulate or tab, either one you could use. And it provides a frequency table of observations for your variable. And then you can also add this detail of column, and it allows you to generate column percentages. And then lastly, we saw the example of this in the previous slide, but the summarize command just gives descriptive statistics, mean, standard deviation, and the detail option can give you some additional descriptive statistics. So if you want to know more about what a specific command actually does, there's a feature within STATA that you can use. And if you just go to help, STATA command, and then type in the command that you're wanting to get information on, it'll give you a little report of some information about what the command does, how you use it, etc. So this might be helpful if you find yourself working on an assignment and you just want to know more about what a command does. Okay, so now moving on to the third way that you can navigate and use the STATA interface. The third way is creating and using a do file. So a do file is called a do file because their extension at the end of the file name is .do, hence the name do file. And what a do file is, it is essentially a log of all of your recent commands. Executing a do file is essentially the same thing as executing a series of commands interactively through the command window. But what the do file does is it allows you to have a file record of your commands, which is kind of a nice feature if you're doing a lot of data analysis and you want to go back and see all of the commands that you've done. So to create a do file, you would select this option right up here, and it will generate a new do file. The do file is going to look just like a blank text document. And then you will just go right in and start writing the commands that you want to execute, just the same as you would write the commands in the actual command window. So once you have typed in the command that you want to execute, you can select the icon at the top or go to Tools. So this is the icon at the top. Or you can also go to Tools and then go to Execute Do. And this is how you would get Stata to actually then perform the commands and analyses that you asked it to do. To make your do file easier to read, you may also want to add any notes or commentaries of what you're doing. In order to make a note, you want to make sure that you put an asterisk before actually typing in your note. This will just ensure that the program does not read the note as a command. So if you can see here, there's a little asterisk, and then it says table of frequencies for relationship status variable. So because I put this asterisk right here, Stata knows to read this as a note and not as a potential command. And one helpful thing to know is that once you put the asterisk, it will turn green, indicating that it's a note and not a command. So the commands are actually in black text here. And then also note that any blank lines are just blank lines, right? Like this line 3 is just blank, and that's fine. Stata knows that there's nothing there that needs to be executed. It will only be reading the black text here. And also very important is knowing how to save your do file. It's pretty straightforward in terms of how you save a do file. You just go to File, and then it will drop down with the Save As, and you can save it as whatever name you'd like to save your file as. Okay. So now we're going to just do a series of practice exercises. The slides here are for reference. We're going to be working with the data set that we saw a little bit earlier in a couple slides prior to this one. In this example data set, we have variables of animal. Animal reflects the number of pets one has. We also have a variable of gender, so male or female. And then we have a variable reflecting participants' happiness. So it was scored on a scale of 1 to 5, where higher scores indicate greater happiness. Using that data set, this first question we're going to walk through is, does the number of pets someone has correlate with their happiness? In this case, we are just looking to do a correlation between this animal variable and this variable of happiness. So the command in Stata for a correlation, a bivariate correlation, is correlate. And then we would list the two variables that we want to perform the correlation of. So animal and happiness. This would be the command that we could type in the command window. Or alternatively, we could have gone in using the menu and dialog box and gone from statistics, summaries, tables, and tests, summary and descriptive statistics, and then selected correlations and covariances. Either way, we'll generate the same output, and the output that it will generate will look something like this. So again, in the output, the central window of Stata, we would see our command here of correlate animal happiness, and it gives you a little correlation matrix. So we would see in this case that the correlation between animal and happiness is approximately 0.81. We could also move forward from this and go ahead and graph this correlation. That is the correlation between number of pets and happiness. So to create a basic scatter plot, we would use this command of scatter. And then really important to note here is that for Stata, when using this command, it actually asks for the y-axis variable first, then followed by the x-axis variable. So in this case, we would do scatter and then happiness and animal. And that would be, again, so that we have animal on the x-axis and happiness on the y-axis. Our scatter plot would look something like this. So we can see that it's marked each individual observation. And once it creates a scatter plot, you can select it. So you do File, Start Graph Editor. So File, and then you would do Graph Editor. And that's how you can make any changes you'd like if you want to spice up your graph and make it look pretty, or fix anything if you want to change colors. And then alternatively, if you prefer not to use the command, you can also use the menu and dialog box to produce a scatter plot. And this would be the pathway that you could use. All right, and now for another practice example. Let's say we wanted to know whether the relationship between number of pets one has varies based on gender of the participant. So for this, for answering this question, we might want to perform an independent samples t-test. So to perform an independent samples t-test, we would type our command of t-test, and then we would type in our dependent variable, so animal, and then we would put in this option of by, and in parentheses, gender. So this would be our grouping variable. Or we could use the menu and dialog box and just input the variables there instead of just typing it out here in the command window. Using this, it would generate some output like this. So it's got a breakdown of some descriptive statistics for each group. Group 0 was the female participants and group 1 was the male participants. So you can see it generated some descriptive statistics, give you some combined descriptive statistics as well. And then down at the bottom, we would see the results of our t-test. So if you've ever worked with SPSS before or some other similar software, the output for a t-test or for a statistical analysis might have looked a little bit differently than it's presented in STATA. But all the same information is here. So on the right-hand side, you can see your test statistic value, your degrees of freedom, and then it presents information about your null hypothesis, your alternative hypothesis, and the different options for our alternative hypothesis. And then it gives you your p-values down at the bottom here, depending on which alternative hypothesis you're using. So these examples were just a couple of things that you can do in STATA, but STATA is a software that has a lot of options, a lot of different commands that you can use to perform a wide variety of statistical analysis. So this really just scratched the surface. If you are looking for more specific examples or further resources, we encourage you to use some of these resources we've provided here. So first and foremost, the STATA website has links to numerous videos and cheat sheets for learning common STATA commands or performing specific analyses. And similarly, the STATA YouTube channel has a lot of good resources that walk you step by step through specific analyses you might be looking to perform. And then finally, the UCLA Institute for Digital Research and Educational Statistical Consulting is another great resource that gives you a breakdown of how to use STATA and what commands might be useful for specific analyses. So that was the end of our presentation for today. hopefully it was helpful in terms of learning a little bit more about what STATA is, just a basic overview of its interface and how to use it. But if you do have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat and we'll address them. Or if you want to share them aloud, you're welcome to do that as well. We'll take a few minutes for questions.
I actually have a quick question. I know that you guys mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm a little scattered today. How do we access STATA through ASU? Is there a way for us to be able to utilize it through a class or through an ASU program?
Yeah, so currently ASU hasn't made it available to students to download for free on their computers. So if you do want to access STATA, you're welcome to come visit the SAM Lab and use one of our computers because we do have it downloaded onto all of our computers here.
Okay.
If you want to work on a personal computer though, you can also have the option of like downloading it specifically from STATA Corporation.
Okay.
That does have a charge associated with it, but I believe they have student discounts. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they might. If not, you're more than welcome to come by the SAM Lab and use our computers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'll look into what that fee might look like. I'm actually currently not in Arizona.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't be able to come in, but I'll look at what some of my other options would be. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Just one question, in which building is the SAM Lab?
Yeah, so we're over on the West Campus and we're in the FAB, the Faculty Administration Building.
Oh, okay.
In the basement, we're B12.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? And if you think of a question later on, you can always feel free to send us an email. We'd be happy to answer questions. We'll also be posting these slides on our website along with the recording. So you can refer to it if, say you're working on a homework assignment and you need some help navigating STATA, those resources will be there for you. So I think we'll end it here. Thank you all for joining and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Not bad at all.